There's a new Pentagon press pool. The new corps is made up of groups and individuals who agreed to a new press policy put in place by the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. Nearly all long-standing news outlets, including CNN, rejected the very restrictive policy and turned in their press passes. I want to bring in CNN's chief media analyst, Brian Stelter, and former CNN Pentagon correspondent, our good friend Barbara Starr. Brian, let me start with you. Take us through the outlets who now have access to the Pentagon.
Yeah, this is all about publicity, Wolf, as opposed to real journalism. As you see, the Pentagon's press office trying to bring in MAGA media influencers in a apparent bid to replace the journalists that had been at the Pentagon before. But of course, those journalists from CNN and the New York Times and AP and Reuters and dozens of other outlets, they are still on the job, still covering the Pentagon just from outside the building's 5 walls. Some of the new outlets, some of the MAGA media outlets that have been invited in by Pete Hegseth and his aides include Gateway Pundit, National Pulse, Just the News, Frontlines, and Lindell TV. That's a streaming service from the MyPillow CEO, Mike Lindell. When you dig a little deeper into these outlets, you see they are almost entirely right-wing, but more importantly, they're better known for commentary than straight news reporting. They're best known for their pro-Trump talking points and not actually for investigative reporting. And some of the outlets acknowledge that up front, that they exist to be partisan media outlets supporting the president. Gateway Pundit, for example, has faced defamation lawsuits involving 2020 election lies. There are still appeals underway. Lindell TV, that's Mike Lindell's channel. You know, he has been in court for years over those 2020 election lies. So these are outlets that advance the president's agenda. They do not specialize in investigative reporting or digging, but it is notable the Pentagon trying to bring in these influencers in a kind of a PR stunt of sorts to say, hey, we're going to bring in our new voices to the Pentagon.
Good point. Barbara Starr, you and I are old friends, colleagues. We covered the Pentagon together when I was the Pentagon correspondent and moved over to cover the White House. You replaced me, did an amazing job. How do you see these right-wing outlets who are now part of the press corps at the Pentagon that both of us used to cover on a day-to-day basis, me during the first Gulf War? What's your reaction when you see what's going on?
Well, first of all, I just absolutely reject the Pentagon's assertion that there is a new Pentagon press corps that they have announced. That's not how the world works in this country with a free press. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of journalists that continue to cover the Pentagon who did not sign up to the new restrictive rules, who are continuing to do their jobs every day. The Pentagon's gone so far as to say these journalists, the traditional journalists, self-deported from the Pentagon. How ridiculous is that? Deportation is a message point, and it indicates criminal behavior. That is not what is going on here. So reporters are continuing to report, and they're breaking scoops every single day from outside the Pentagon. And Mr. Hegseth may find that he is going to continue to struggle with, looking at his morning reading and finding breaking news stories that he has no idea are even coming at him. I think it's a shame, Wolf. There is plenty of room for new media out there, new credible media emerging in this country. There's plenty of room to discuss the question of the lack of public trust in some media, plenty of room to move ahead into a more modern age. And that is what many news organizations are already doing. But to, hurl insults and to rely on political influencers, it's not journalism, and it's not what the First Amendment and the free press is really all about in this country. It's about protecting reporters, not political influencers.
Yeah, the serious journalists who cover the Pentagon refused to sign that document demanded by the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, that they report only what the Pentagon publicly releases in press releases and can't do any really serious investigative journalism, which is what we all do. Brian, let me get back to you. I want to read something from the New York Times opinion columnist Maureen Dowd. She writes this, and I'm quoting now. Hegseth, immature and unconfident, cannot accept that a free press is integral to democracy. Hopefully, the defense secretary who will take over when Hegseth is undone by the press for his ineptitude and un-American diktats will understand that. What do you think? Is there any going back, or are we only going to see more like this? What do you think, Brian?
Well, this may well backfire on Hegseth. You know, journalists continue to report on the military aggressively and gather and gain scoops from outside the Pentagon's walls. So this may backfire. And yes, I do think there are ways to see this being repealed in the past, in the future, that is, and going back to a more normal, traditional setup at the Pentagon. What Hegseth is doing is in line with a broader trend we've seen from the Trump administration. It's about punishing independent journalism and promoting propagandists. We've seen the Trump administration shut down VOA, try to ban the AP from the White House, defund PBS and NPR. At the same time, they're propping up Trumpy websites, giving lots of interviews to Fox News, and pushing AI-generated slop. It's all related. It's all of a piece. And I think most Americans not only see it, they see through it. They see that it's a PR campaign as opposed to a real effort to better inform the American people.
And Barbara, as I'm sure you remember, and I remember it well, when I covered the Pentagon, I would walk around the Pentagon building, the E-ring at the White House, at the Pentagon, and four-star generals and admirals would come up to me and say, Wolf, I saw you on CNN. Here's some information that the American people need to know. They would share some sensitive information with me. I would check it out and report it. I'm sure you did the same thing. You can't do that now because it's not an official, publicly released press release. How is this going to affect the very important information that Pentagon reporters have traditionally put forward and delivered to the American people?
Well, you know, Hegseth doesn't want reporters walking around the building, so he has restricted that very heavily. He seems to labor under the delusion that, you know, classified information just leaps out into those hallways. It's not really the way it goes. It happens. You talk to people, you develop sources. Perhaps the most telling thing is every defense secretary I ever covered walked the hallways themselves. They like to run into reporters. They like to know what the reporters were up to, what they were working on, and to have a relationship with them. Often they would talk about the fact we have nothing to hide. We want to talk to the American public, and often that does go through the news media. That's just a fact in this country. So that's one of the big losses here. That relationship now has to change. It cannot exist the way it has for years. And it remains to be seen, you know, are the American people really going to be the losers in getting less news? I don't think so. I think reporters will be able to dig out the stories, get the scoops, and continue to publish them.
Well, let's hope that happens. Barbara Starr, thank you. Brian Stelter, thanks to you as well.